always. And thank you everyone for attending, and congrats on taking the time to dive in and nerd out on some money topics, which is really the key, right, to getting better with money, using money more favorably. Today, we're going to kind of revisit a topic we visited last year, and it's a really, really dynamic, future forward topic. And even since last year, so much has changed in such interesting ways. And yet, in certain ways, some of the things that we shared, predicted, or expected in last year's discussion about crypto have sort of started to galvanize. And so we're really proud that in this last year and a half, we can see the payoff it is bringing to women everywhere, that we're taking time topic by topic to concentrate on different aspects and angles of money. Because the truth is, to really get fluent in it, we have to get comfortable and familiarized with a wide variety. So today, when we talk about Bitcoin, crypto, and CBDCs, whatever you take away from this, you're going to have more than you started with. That I can tell you. We spent a lot of time preparing this one, did a lot of research in a really dynamic sector, and super excited to share with you. So, as AdaPia mentioned, I'm Jennifer Burnham-Grubbs, co-founder of Women of Wealth. I'm also the CEO of Quantum Insurance Services, which is a high-level consulting firm on risk management products. Risk management is life insurance, disability, long-term care, and annuities, something that most people avoid, and kind of a niche in the finance sector. It's my area of mastery for the last 20 years. And in WOW, I have the gift of being able to speak with masters in all other areas of finance, such as AdaPia, who has a mastery in venture and real estate, just to name a few areas of her specialty. And in WOW, as a mastermind, we like to do that. We increase our collective financial IQ by sharing across silos within our areas of mastery, because I'll tell you right now, there is nobody who knows everything about money. In my industry, I know the limitations of the experts, and in any industry, I've seen the limitations of experts. So it's really about cross-silo and constant process of education, self-education, and curiosity. So when we talk about crypto, okay, when we get into this, I want people to sort of say to themselves, this is the future of money. It might be in 100 years, it might be in 5 years, it might be somewhere in between. And we're in a period of incredible and exciting change. And we kind of have already witnessed it, most of us who have been alive and working with money for the last 10, 15 years. I mean, if you think about what happened with cell phones, right? First, there were pagers in my lifetime, and then there were cell phones. Now there are Apple Watches you can speak from, right? And we now have Zoom. We've all witnessed that happening in the last 20 years, 25 years. Well, we see already the changes happening with money. How many of you actually carry cash on you these days? I mean, I hardly really ever do. But I remember a time when it was absolutely essential to have cash, right? Now we have Apple Pay, we have our phones. We've already really made a huge transition into digital currency. That's really actually already happened. We look at our bank accounts, we're not counting our gold coins or carrying them around in satchels. We haven't been doing that actually for arguably 100 years or more. But that trend is going to continue to escalate, because essentially nature just loves efficiency, and digital currency creates efficiency. It can move at the speed of light. It's lighter footprint. So, you know, for 1,000 years, we've used coins and paper to represent money, right? Already, because there were banknotes as far back as 1,000 years ago. There was paper currency, but even then it wasn't actual gold, right? It just represented the wealth that we were willing to exchange and agree upon. But it has its drawbacks. It's messy. It's actually literally dirty, right? Touching money, it's like, ugh, gross. It's inefficient. If you have to go, I'm staying at a hotel, and yesterday I used up the cash I had, you know, in my wallet, and then the poor guy who took me to my room in a golf cart, I realized I didn't have any cash on me to tip him. I felt really bad. It was inconvenient because I had to have gone to the ATM, gotten all this stuff. I didn't have the time to do that, right? We all kind of prefer digital transactions to a large extent, which is why crypto is likely to become, in some shape or form, the future of money. We're more than already halfway there to being entirely digital. And in fact, there are already dozens of accepted digital currencies other than the bank statement that reflects what I would pretend were dollars, right? When I look online at a screen, I'm talking about pretend dollars, but we already also have digital currencies that go beyond a digital representation of the physical money, which has currently been our system for 1,000 years. The main ones are Bitcoin, which almost everybody has heard of, Ethereum or ETH2, also now known as Serenity, and then CBDCs, which are essentially nation-owned digital currencies, okay? And then there are a lot of other would-be digital players. I consider them would-be digital players. In the crypto summer or crypto boom that was happening about a year and a half or two ago, a lot of it was during COVID, you would hear of all these currencies that could just like blow up overnight, make people all this money. A lot of that was paper gains, and then the bubbles would drop out and people could lose quite a bit as well. They were flash in the pan. A lot of them were fraud or fraudulent, connected to fraud. We saw a huge example of that with FTX and Sam Bankman, who is just a shining example of the scale of fraud that's available in crypto and in this kind of crypto craze. So I like to categorize it into, let's talk about the ones that are most likely real players worth time and attention, and others that maybe were attempting to vie in a space that got a lot of hype, but we may want to turn our attention away from those for our own financial health. Okay, so we've purposely coined the phrase of, would-be players, etc. This is an opinion, okay? And please know it's our opinion, it's my opinion. You can add it into your own thinking about things, but hopefully hearing this opinion will allow you to feel comfortable making your own opinion. So Bitcoin, just real quick, it was the very first digital currency to really gain any kind of fame. It's a masterful and really intriguing entry onto the scene of digital currency. It was the first, and it came embedded with a scarcity model. What that means is there was a limited amount in the world and would always be a limited amount. And that immediately creates scarcity, meaning the law of supply and demand, right? When there's low supply, demand is high, and then the cost goes up. It created intrinsic value because it came with a scarcity embedded into the code of its existence. So that's one thing that makes Bitcoin special. We'll talk about others. Then Ether, which came on the scene, it really helped drive forward smart contract development, like NFTs, which were able to use crypto in applications that then also sort of helped the ecosystem of Web3 and Web4 flourish. And Ether was very transparent and really helped with things like DeFi, decentralized finance, and just other kinds of what we call blockchain or smart contract development, which has really helped a lot in terms of lifting up and buoying up advancements in this arena. So that's another reason Ether brought something to the table other than just being a made-up representation of money. The CBDCs are the nation states, let's say the US, China, whatever, anybody who's realizing this is all happening, that things are moving into a digital state, and they're thinking, well, we still want to be in charge of money. So we're going to create digital representation of our own fiat, like the dollar, the euro, the yen, so that the entrance of cryptocurrency doesn't completely rob the nations of power and authority over their own money. So they're just developing that in a way to sort of jump onto the bandwagon and own part of the narrative when it comes to these developments in cryptocurrency. And now I'm going to skip the rest about the would-be digital players, because again, I think that we should focus on the ones that are probably most significant for us and our money. AdaPia, do you want to talk about this slide? Because I think you're the one who helped first make us conscious of this kind of adoption.
Sure. So yeah, thank you. So this is a slide. I love this graph because we're really looking at a representation of the adoption of technology. So all that means is something new comes on the scene, and there's always going to be a small number of people who are its proponents, and a whole bunch of people who don't understand, say no to anything new, are really entrenched in their ways and just think this is never going to happen. And cryptocurrency really falls into this category of adoption curves, and you can really see how over time these things they get taken up into our everyday life. And the one to point to here is when you look at the trajectory of the internet, and it's really fun to go back and look at some old articles from even like the 90s, and like all these like Wall Street Journal, like, oh, the internet is a scam, no one's ever going to use it, blah blah blah. And now look at us. And so in a way we can think about this with a lot of what's going on underneath the function of digital currencies, because just like the internet and just like the HTTP protocol, which none of us, I don't know how it works, maybe you all do, but we are going to be transacting everything on the blockchain, and everything that we are talking about, these digital currencies, are built on a blockchain. And so this is going to be the underneath layer, like the plumbing of the financial system, the plumbing of contracts. Like this is how it's going to go. And so that's why we really like to focus not so much on, oh, let's trade it, right? But let's understand what it is and how it's going to impact our lives.
Yeah. And the other thing I love pointing out is if you look at these curves, we had the auto, which took like, I don't know, 80, 100 years to fully become a part of every single day. And then we had like the telephone, which started, old school, and now look where we are. But each one of these, the adoption rate, meaning the upward slope, is getting faster and faster and faster. Look at that. TV, computers, mobile phones, the internet, and crypto is not even on here yet. But this is where the digital revolution entered. So we can expect, I said it might be 5 years, it might be 100 years. It's probably closer, I hate to say it, but it's like 10 years away, 11 years away. This kind of digital revolution we're talking about with money. I'm even a little intimidated by it and scared of it. But looking at data, it's very likely we will adopt. And luckily, what I've noticed with all of these crazy trends is like they adopt in a way that ends up feeling somewhat natural, even though it's massive changes. So it won't be as awful as it might feel to see such massive change happening. So in this space, and to your point, AdaPia, about the naysayers, the contentions, the unpredictability, right? We want to think about what's true. What can we really tell is true? One thing I love to talk about, and I talked about this in one of the investment theory kind of presentations we did, is what are vectors? Because vectors are directions that have a certain momentum, a line with momentum that you can see kind of cutting through all the confusion, the chaos, the BS, right? These are a few that I can say I can stand behind that are like vectors I believe in. Number one, Bitcoin seems like it is here to stay. Now, we did in Wealth Mastery for Women session 9, and this is like, I don't know, session 17 or something like that. Oh, this is session 20, it looks like. So back in session 9, we told people that if 1,000 new cryptocurrencies all evolve, right, we're going to end up right back where we started, which is that there are 1,000 currencies today. They just are paper, right? And it's inefficient and it's messy and it's sort of silly when we're in more and more of a global world to have 1,000 different currencies. There's sort of an inevitability to one day being in a global system where there's a global currency. And because of the efficiency that would offer, it would actually create a byproduct of more money into the system, because when you right now exchange monies from yen to something else, there's a lot of dump of waste and third-party middlemen and all of that, right, in that inefficiency. So we said that way back then. We said that there shouldn't be 1,000 cryptocurrencies, because then what's the point of that? It doesn't actually really move the needle into efficiency. And I'm happy to say it does seem like the rest of the world is also sort of following that, and that Bitcoin for sure is going to be one of the leaders. So a lot of the copycats that wanted to get in on the game, they were not created equal. But people who haven't fully yet understood the crypto revolution would really not be able to tell that, because it's all so foreign. But it's good for you to know that Bitcoin does look like it's here to stay and that there are really good reasons for it. Plus, it also has a huge amount of market share already. Okay. In my opinion, or, I would hope and think AdaPia's opinion too, Ether looks like it's also pretty viable. Like, for example, PayPal literally just announced a whole payment stablecoin using ETH blockchain. So when someone like PayPal, who is arguably one of the leaders in how we transact money today anyhow, is choosing to commit to and link itself to Ether, more and more synthesis is occurring onto that choice as another of the leading cryptocurrencies, right? And it is really about market share, because there's not hopefully going to be room for 1,000 would-be players. We just want to have a couple consolidated leaders so that the actual efficiency starts to blossom. And so that's a really good sign that PayPal is getting behind Ether. And also, because Ether is so transparent, and it's very much like a team player in how it helps provide support for multifunctional use of cryptocurrency, it's bringing a value proposition in itself that's, like I said before, way above and beyond just being digital money, right? So we think that it is also here to stay because of its applications, its transparency, and it also has the second, arguably most market share after Bitcoin, massively above all the other would-be players. The other key vector that is for sure happening is that regulation is on the rise, because the existing world of money, the SEC, the US government, global governments everywhere, realize, wow, this thing is really not going away. It's catching on. We better jump on this train. And our country, the US, lags way behind other countries in actually having adopted it. So Japan was a major early adopter of Bitcoin. They're so future forward. It's really cool. And in fact, that's part of what drove Bitcoin's success. And they've been so early to adapt, and they've been so good to create regulation, that actually everyone in Japan wasn't scammed by FTX. They couldn't be scammed by FTX because they have so much regulation and protection in place that it actually prevented anyone in Japan being able to be scammed by FTX. In our country, crazy amounts of scam and loss because of what Sam Bankman did, right? So the US is coming on board now, and actually just literally like a week ago, there was a big announcement that the global summit and the big leaders globally are going to start to come up with some consistent regulations around crypto. And also, they're all, like I said, they're jumping on making their own national digital currencies to, I guess, try and resist being completely supplanted by the other major dominant cryptocurrencies. AdaPia, can I talk about Bitcoin and then you'll talk about ETH, or do you want to do it the other way around?
I'm good. I guess I could talk a little bit about Bitcoin. I actually bought my first Bitcoin in 2013. And the funny story about that is I went to one of the very first kind of like digital currency or like Bitcoin meetups in LA. Or it was like January of 2014. Anyway, I bought at the top of the market at that time. And man, was I upset when this thing tanked the next month. And I thought, well, that was stupid. I'm so glad I didn't put like sincerely like large amounts of money in it, but I did understand and believe in in its value. And then I just left it there. I thought, whatever, I don't know what to do with it. I'm just gonna leave it in this thing called a wallet, which was Coinbase at the time. And lo and behold, obviously we know that Bitcoin has gone up. I've watched it go up, I've watched it go down, I've watched it go up, I've watched it go down. But Bitcoin was basically the original cryptocurrency. And Jennifer, you already described like the scarcity of it. I mean, it's really modeled um, after this idea that when it's scarce, it can't be overinflated. And without getting too much into the weeds of it, but our financial system currently, because of how money can be printed and essentially created at any point in time by central banks, is inflationary. And when it's inflated like that, it also loses value. So here the idea being that every time more Bitcoin is mined, there's only ever a finite amount. And so that amount, the value of that goes up over time. And that's built into the algorithm. And and Bitcoin is mined. These are computers that use electricity to mine this Bitcoin, and that is essentially the fuel that gives it value. We saw this with other kind of cryptocurrencies where they could just be created, just like money, just like paper printing. They could just be created, but what value is there if you can just make a bunch? So it goes down in value, and this is really the premise behind Bitcoin. And so I talked a little bit about its price. This is really a function of these like early adopters, very, very early adopters, which were gamers, and they had their own little chips and they would mine their own Bitcoin on their laptops. And now you definitely cannot do that. It requires so much energy. And just to speak on that really quickly, because I do have a small Bitcoin mining fund, there's a lot of misinformation around the mining of Bitcoin and these miners and the use of electricity relative to other things like household washer and dryers or data centers that run AWS. There's really a lot of misinformation about Bitcoin, but what we are seeing is it is the primary financial cryptocurrency. Institutional investors are investing in it, so it is being taken up by the financial system and large financial players. So that is something of note. And a lot of trading is happening behind the scenes on it because this is in essence like a digital gold where it's finite. And so over time, there are bets being made that it will go up in value.
Yeah. And if you look at the price in 2009, when it first came out, it was less than a tenth of a penny for a Bitcoin. By 2013, it was $800. Now it's fluctuated in between all these checkpoints I'm sharing here, okay? But it's still going up across all the volatility. It's going up, it's going up. 2017, it was 14K per coin. 2021, it was 46K per coin. It's currently at 27K, but it's in a dip, okay? But it is volatile. Make no mistake. It's volatile, but it is going up massively from where it began. I was told by a friend of mine about Bitcoin in 2009, and I poo-pooed it. I was like, it's not unhackable. Somebody will be able to hack it or whatever, you know. I could easily have gotten some, and I didn't. So they say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is right now. I personally have participated in the Bitcoin mining fund that AdaPia has because I regret not having bought it in 2009. Having said that, it's probably or almost certainly my most volatile of investment choices by far. It's the highest risk. And I'm not saying that you guys should do it. I'm just saying you should know where it is on the spectrum. The thing I think is amazing about Bitcoin is one person or one group of people owns almost half the Bitcoin in the world. Satoshi Nakamoto is, we don't even know, is a completely anonymous group or a person. And whoever owns that much Bitcoin is probably the 15th richest person in the world right now. And they could dominate the entire world. So the question is, who is this person or group of people behind Bitcoin? And what was their ultimate motive for creating Bitcoin? Was it altruism? Or was it nefarious? We really can't possibly know. Hopefully it was altruism, right? And it can create a lot of good if that power is stewarded in an altruistic way. We can only hope. So we don't know. It's all cloak and dagger. So we'll kind of go quickly through all of this because you can also read this for yourself. But I did mention that the G20 summit just endorsed a massive sweep of regulations to try to a little bit more tame and control what Bitcoin is on the scene, especially now that we really see the mass of adoption that's happening within the true financial system already. It is theoretically a very complex system that's difficult to hack, but still hackers have succeeded in stealing Bitcoin, and then they have to launder it. Just like people who have dirty money in other ways. They have to transact it, and hide it, and move it, and place it in different ways to try to erase the paper trail. But with more and more regulation, the thing is, it will be easier and easier because of blockchain to see who is touching Bitcoin and how. Which takes me to, how do you actually own any Bitcoin? It's really complicated. You have to have a digital wallet, okay, which is very alien. It feels very different. It's not like logging into chase.com, right? You have to log into a digital wallet site, and then you have a public facing key where you have to let everyone know that you're transacting this Bitcoin, but then you have a secret passcode that's yours and only yours. Nobody will ever know it. That is the only way you access or unlock the let's just call it the digital safe that holds your Bitcoin. And if you ever lose that password, you're completely screwed. So it's kind of wild, right? Like you have to learn how to keep that passcode somewhere that's not going to get forgotten. And passcodes, can be tricky. And you don't want to go putting your passcode for your Bitcoin on your like auto password saver or whatever. So those are some of the maybe challenging pieces of learning how to engage with Bitcoin. Plus the wallets and all that, there was a lot of fraud and weirdness around that. So it's, you have to, if you're going to engage, you have to engage in a really informed way. So, and then there's ETH. AdaPia, you do such a good job. Do you actually want to talk about this one too, or and I'll just fill in, or do you want me to get started on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about it. I know that we have, gosh, there's just like so much. I hope that everyone will watch the replay and like pause and read the slides because there's just so much information. So I would say this, look, the big difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum is that Ethereum is not finite. Most other blockchains are not finite. Bitcoin is the primary one, and really that's the one where there's 21 million, the scarcity component. But Ethereum is the second biggest. It is the most used. And what is important to know about Ethereum is that its rails, its blockchain is being used as an underneath layer that all these other, they're called layer 1 and layer 2 blockchains, they are being built on top of Ethereum. So there's a whole world of companies, which is where the cryptocurrency thing started, that are building on the Ethereum blockchain. And so where Bitcoin is mined and finite, Ethereum is what it's called staked, because the big thing with crypto is that it needs to be secured, because if somebody just walks in and could own most or all of it, it could direct the entire outcome of it, which is not what we want. We want a level of security. So with ETH, it is staked. So if you own it, you basically put it in, I'm just going to use an analogy of like a bank account. It sits there and it earns interest. And by you putting it there, you are creating security around this blockchain. So it is not technically decentralized, but it is as decentralized as a centralized currency could get. We'll put it that way. So the crypto communities, these blockchain developers, they're working to create mechanisms so that there is security and there is a level of decentralization so that not just one person could control it all. But at the same time, those two things are not always, mutually exclusive. They don't always work together. So it is the original smart contract, and these smart contracts, basically they take out a middleman. So if I'm going to transact with Jennifer, there's an algorithm, a smart contract that says once AdaPia does this, then Jennifer automatically gets that. Currently, that middleman looks like a bank or a payment provider or something that sits in between, slows it down, takes fees. Right. I mean, this can go in so many ways. Anyone who's bought or sold real estate knows that it takes weeks to get a closing done, and smart contracts would allow that to be done in hours, really. Because what we're trying to do here is, it's called trustless transactions. It's trust based. It's called trustless, but to me, it's really trust based. So like once you do something, you get the equivalent of it. Right now, we have to put middlemen in between parties that basically we're being told they're not trustworthy, which can be true sometimes. There's a lot of fraudsters. So Ethereum has made a lot of progress in its infrastructure. It has gone, as Jennifer said, into something called ETH2, known as Serenity. These are all like really, really technical things, but know that there are a world of developers out there that are constantly working on Ethereum. And that's really important. So maintenance and upgrades to this digital network. And I actually know somebody who bought Ethereum in like super, super early, like so early, and it made like a relatively small bet at the time, but it really turned out to be like a huge bet. So sometimes right place, right time, right decision, but he didn't also put his whole life savings in. He put in like 10K, but today that 10K is worth millions of dollars. So this is why I like to talk about this. It's not so that you can make millions of dollars. I mean, I want you to, but knowing what's out there and being informed and curious and open-minded because there's a lot of negativity in the media. And, in the investment space, we often want to do the opposite of what the media is trying to engender with our emotions. So a couple of years ago, as we were saying, the NFT craze was the NFTs are transacted on Ethereum for the most part, and that really drove the price. And we're in a crypto winter, NFT winter. That remains to be seen how that all plays out. A lot of those companies are pivoting to being more like kind of real companies instead of just NFTs. It's a really interesting space, actually. We can talk about that maybe next year. And so just going through a little bit of this like high level of Ethereum. But bottom line is it also is here to stay. It is not as decentralized as Bitcoin on a very, very technical term, but it is very stable, and it is the most used blockchain for development of smart contract and other blockchains that build on top of it.
In talking to you, I just thought too how relieved I am that there is ETH, because if the Bitcoin owners take over the world and they're not good, right? And that was the one system, it would be very scary. But at least with ETH and Bitcoin, there's a decentralization of the centralization, or a central, I don't know. It's like checks and balances to some extent that people could engage in one or both, as opposed to one and only one dominant one owned by mysterious monks that we don't even know who they are. And also you can see here, we didn't get around to doing it, but early on when WoW formed, we bought an NFT using a little bit of ETH that we at WoW thought, all right, let's just try a little bit and play a little bit with it. And you never know, our NFT did not increase in value or anything right now. Who knows, maybe one day, but it's very pretty. So that's an example of the bang and bust possibilities when you're participating with ETH and with NFTs and with Bitcoin. There is so much volatility. Okay. So much need for staying attuned and kind of being in conversation as you want to engage. Again, lots and lots of regulation on the horizon. The SEC has definitely been trying to come after ETH and Bitcoin and other kinds of crypto to regulate how they are even traded, right? Forget about mining or anything, just even trading it. If you decide that you're going to buy some Bitcoin and then sell it, they now want to consider that kind of like a stock subject to capital gains, which, it's all being regulated now in real time because all this change is happening in real time. And the thing with wallets, which we mentioned, is the only way you can really transact with crypto right now, that they have been highly unregulated. And several of them were like full on scam wallets, right? And they like trick you into giving them all your bank info to buy your crypto, and then they just bam, So it's very difficult to distinguish from which ones are real, which ones are scams. Really, really important to plug in and connect with people who are in the know and current, because it can change very quickly on a dime. It's really important to be plugged in with a community if you want to be participating in this space, because you know what it's like. You try to research something on the internet and you don't even really know what you can believe per se. It's nice to have the balance between what you can research on the internet and people that you specifically trust that you can talk to. That's how most of us do best.
Jennifer, I wanted to jump in super quick before we go to CBDCs, just for everyone to know. And the scams that are happening here, they also happen in our banking system. And I just want everyone to be really aware of this, because wire fraud is I think it's like a $250 billion a year annually in wire fraud. And just like this is going to be like a little PSA about cybersecurity and like email security. So for example, like I'm doing some a real estate transaction currently, and I got this random email that was like, "Oh, your funds are coming tomorrow. Just fill out this form." Well, yeah, right. You're not my escrow agent. You're not my title agent. And these things happen constantly, like constantly. Like we know some ladies that are in the cybersecurity space, and you would not sleep at night if you knew what was going on. So what we're seeing in crypto, which gets blown up, has always happened and continues to happen. And maybe we should do a cybersecurity, like a banking and cybersecurity online fraud session, because it's really, really important to know. And to Jennifer's point, and the reason I bring this up on our like, regular banking stuff, is that on what we've seen on the crypto side is it was almost easier for people to get scammed and defrauded, because I don't know, I'm like, oh, I'll click that link and this person seems fine. And you just don't know in your regular bank or your online bank, you know a little bit better, but it can be really easy. So again, talking to people that you trust, having a community, reaching out, asking questions. It's okay. We've all been scammed. Like we've all, we've all hit the click the phishing link or, it happens to to all of us, to the best of us, and we're all the best. So I just wanted to bring that up because there are so many different ways that this happens. And over here on the crypto side, because it's so foreign to us to use these like digital wallets. And I promise that over the years, those are going to get easier to use because people are like, first they do the tech part of it all, like, and then they do the UX. Then they make it usable. Then they make it a little bit easier. And even though the point of crypto is to be basically be your own bank, we all need help with things like passwords and wallets. And there will be services that come in to allow us to have recourse when our humanness causes us to forget a password.
For sure. And anything that's foreign and out of our comfort zone, right, feels scarier and more foreign. That's the point with what they called Operation Choke Point, which was that the industry felt like the banks and the traditional finance was purposely trying to stop cryptocurrency from coming onto the scene because they felt threatened at first. What that did was make it worse as far as any opportunities for fraud. Once regulation and adoption becomes a little bit more full circle, then some of the same safeties we have with our old-fashioned banking can then start to infiltrate into the crypto world, and there'll just be a little bit more synthesis with things. And we're in a time of massive transition, massive transition. So CBDCs are, like we said, it's kind of the natural response of the governments to the disruption, right? And it's kind of like, oh shoot, these things are not going away. We're going to have to jump on this train now, and we're going to have to try to control it a little bit, right? And in the end, that's going to be probably good for everyone, finally, because it is here to stay in one shape or other. Okay. The CBDCs is probably like I would consider one of the newest trends, right? Because they were the last to jump on this bandwagon. Bitcoin's been around almost 15 years. And CBDCs, I would argue, are relatively new developments to the extent that they're now being seriously handled by governments as an attempt to create crypto that they have the ability to manipulate. Because to AdaPia's point, Bitcoin and ETH, it's proprietary. If I own ETH, or I am sovereign in my relationship with that money. There's like no government or bank or anybody who gets to really tell me what I get to do with it. It cuts out all the middlemen, right? And it's really disruptive for that reason. So it's a very interesting thing to see now the establishment attempting to jump on the bandwagon so that they can continue to have some kind of control. For example, right now, the Fed loves to manipulate interest rates as a way to try to pump or pull the economy, right? They're full on manipulating economy in the US, right? Because they can do that because they own the dollar and what we do with that fiat. They can't really do that on blockchain. They can't really do that with crypto. So now they're like, well, what if we go CBDC, and that way we can at least continue to pull levers for our economy? So it's a very interesting area, a lot of new developments. I think it's one of those like, watch what happens in developments because it's just too new to really make any big prognoses about it. And then the question would be, because we want to leave a lot of room for Q&A with this one, is like, where does this leave everybody? If it seems a little murky right now, then you're definitely reading the tea leaves correctly. It's definitely murky. There's so much change. Nothing's fully established yet. And it's really exciting to be in a period of time like that. And it's also really scary, and it really makes it necessary to try and get good information. That's one of the things we try to do in WOW, is create webinars like this and communities where we can collectively be sounding boards for each other and start to get information that feels like it can make sense to us, because so much change is happening, right? But we do know that regulation is finally happening, and it's happening globally. So things just start hopefully becoming a little bit less chaotic in the next 10 years. Okay. Um, Also, countries are scrambling to get on the train, right? And that will create competition for Bitcoin and ETH, right? And think about this. These people are in, right? They're in with the Fed, they're in with the Chinese government. So I believe they will vie for spaces in the competition sort of table for digital currency and squeeze out a lot of those would-be smaller players that we said let's ignore at the very outset of this webinar, because those guys don't have, like Dogecoin, it doesn't have an in at the Fed. It doesn't have an in with the Chinese government. They were small. They didn't really have any value to begin with. Hopefully, those are just going to get squeezed out and gone. And so if there will be additional currencies, it will be the CBDCs plus Bitcoin and ETH. But that's just our prognosis, our hope. We actually hope that that happens. But again, this is an opinion. And it's good to know that there still are plenty of other crypto copycats. There's still lots of people, even in the US, trying to get in onto the SEC as a formal exchange, and they're not giving up necessarily. We just think that hopefully they'll be eliminated, but they're not completely eliminating themselves from the race, let's just say. It may be harder for them to get a footing, but it's really going to create a buyer beware environment where you, as a person who's navigating this terrain, is going to have to really try to get very clear on the vectors, on the intrinsic value propositions of any of these players if you're going to participate in any shape or form, right? So I just want to remind everybody of this wonderful chap. He's a perfect example of unchecked investment, bandwagon thinking, excitement, and maybe some of the grossness that was possible with the whole crypto craze, right? A lot of people just didn't really understand crypto. It's a whole other paradigm, but they didn't really want to admit that they don't understand it, right? Nobody wants to be like, I don't get it. So it's kind of like the emperor's new clothes. And then this kid, whose parents had connections at the Fed, and he went to MIT and he can pretend he's Einstein, manages to get just millions, or was it even billions of dollars thrown at him, and he didn't execute any of it responsibly at all. And it's just an absolute dumpster fire. Okay. So buyer beware, yeah. And we do things like this at WOW to help ourselves have an anchor, so we don't just have to jump on bandwagons and work on groupthink. We like to try and think for ourselves, and we do that by thinking critically with each other in connection and bringing in data to the potluck as we kind of grow our financial IQ. We like this matrix. We've kind of created it, that if you're looking at any aspect of money, there's crypto, there's real estate, there's risk management, there's annuities, there's the stocks, everything else. It's good to understand where they really fall on the risk matrix. And, crypto, Bitcoin, they are high risk, potential high reward. So they are high risk. Just know that. It's not an annuity. It's not a life insurance policy. It's not a bond or a CD. It's the opposite. But there can be very high reward. So now that you've got this enhanced financial IQ, thanks to today, what are some things you could do if your interest is piqued and you want to start to maybe play a little bit? You could do a little bit of dollar cost averaging into buying just very small amounts of some of the leading players. I know a guy who just buys $40 a month of Bitcoin, and it's like, I don't know, I'll just see what happens from it. That's low stakes and potential high reward. You could try buying just one coin and holding it for the really long. I have one ETH and I'm just holding it for a long time just in case it goes well. You could buy a fraction of one coin, right? If you don't have all, $1,500 to buy an ETH, you could buy a fraction of an ETH, right? And that just gets you sort of your feet wet with what it is to have a digital wallet and learn how to actually deal with that, because that's a whole learning curve in and of itself, right? It's like learning to use an iPhone for the first time. It's like, okay. And absolutely, you can continue to research these topics and opinions and create your own point of view with some critical thinking. Due diligence everything that you do, including the tools that you choose to use. Certainly, if you ever want to join the WOW community, we're a helpful forum for due diligencing. We know we have a lot of members who are somewhat versed in engaging with crypto. and we all lean on each other to help ourselves grow our financial IQ. I guess I'll just say last is we as women excel at networking, thinking critically, connecting the dots. So if you choose to tread carefully in this sector, and stick to I call them the well-paved, well-lit roads, stick to like the Bitcoin, the national fiat, and go at your own pace, then you have a right to go explore these woods if that's what you want to do. And I'm glad you took today to sort of educate yourself so that you can engage, because we don't really see this thing necessarily just disappearing. We see it as becoming more and more a part of our lives potentially. But that said, you do not have to go jump straight into the mosh pit after reading or hearing anything that we've shared here today. This is not a, take your life savings and invest in Bitcoin kind of message at all. It's just a PSA. A little bit about what we are here at WOW. This is our mantra, right? We have all worked so hard as women, and we believe that the more educated we get about money matters, the better we get at leveraging it to work for us instead of us just working for our money. It's all about creating passive income and helping our money grow in our sleep. And we do that by really having these interesting and engaged dialogues with each other and with experts on all the different factors and facets of money. And this is our sort of mission at WOW. You can definitely check us out at womenofwealth.com, www.womxnofwealth.com. There are many different ways to engage in our community. There's some really low barrier to entry ways to become a member of WOW, and you actually automatically get membership in Questus, which is this incredible app that helps you kind of do a financial tune-up, and it has measurable impact on people's financial position. The AI with Questus is amazing. Just one time engaging with Questus and people have 25% greater confidence with their debt, 24% savings on their health care, 84%, I think it was, increased confidence. So if you want to be part of WOW and you want to explore us, we offer Questus